Hello and welcome to the Lazy Book Club podcast, the book club for those who don't want to read or leave the house. My name is Matt Gonzalez.
Ahoy! It's David Cox.
And I'm Josh Matheson.
And this is our epilogue episode of Peter Pan, which for those of you who didn't listen to the Alice's Adventures in Wonderland one, is basically our episode where we round off finishing a book. We go through our highlights, we go through our lowlights, and we always have our special Quizmaster guest. So we have with us today Noah from the Gaming Arc. Hello, Noah.
Hello.
Welcome
Nice
back.
What's
Good
up?
to have you.
Hey!
So for those of you who don't know, when we did our epilogue episode last time, Noah came on and shared some of the theories around Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, how Lewis Carroll went through writing it. So generally this is a kind of chat through some of the facts that really me, Josh and David probably should have done right when we started the book. But this is the Lazy Book Club, and we don't do anything. We get Noah in to do it for us.
That's
instead.
Yeah.
So Noah's got a few facts for us for this book.
I do.
And then we've also got a quiz.
Come on, I'm so excited.
And at the moment, Josh is one up, partly because I let him have it.
You didn't.
We both pressed the buzzer at the same time, and I said,
Shut
it means
up.
more to you, you have it. So we'll get onto that later with the quiz. But I just thought it'd be nice to go around and have a little chat about what our favourite parts of the book were. So, boys, how did you guys find Peter Pan? Was it everything that you thought it would be?
I definitely enjoyed it, and not that we're playing a comparison game, but I did enjoy it more than Alice's Adventures in Wonderland.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we're allowed to say that. Are we going to start some kind of,
Yeah.
you know,
You can
favoritism
start a
list?
ranking system. Why not? It's
Thank
our
you.
podcast. We can do what we like.
It's a frame of reference.
I mean, to be fair, personally, I've definitely enjoyed listening to this more than I did with the Alice in Wonderland one. I think you guys hit your stride with this book.
Well, thank you very much,
Definitely
Noah.
There's something in us not actually having to leave our house. So we
Yeah, we've got lazier, and that's made it better. Absolutely. So yeah, no, I think I did really enjoy it. I think there were moments when it was moving a little bit too slow for my liking, but then there were moments when I sort of then felt like, oh, do you know what? We sort of are forgiven those slower episodes because then we got a really exciting one, and it kind of meant it led to those exciting ones being all the more enjoyable to read and to listen to.
David, what was your favourite bit of the book?
Not necessarily like specific moment, but I really didn't realise I would, but I really, really enjoyed the sort of like this story between Hook and Peter Pan. And it was so not what we thought. Like we were just expecting that, Hook, he's the epitome of evil, but storybook evil.
Yeah.
But there was so much more to him. He was actually, you know, this amoral human with only like one sort of thing that drove him. They're really like complex characters. And also Peter Pan just being this complete anti-hero.
Yes.
Like we were expecting him to be, because he is like portrayed, like there's a play park near me called Peter Pan Play Park. I don't know what I was expecting it to be.
Is this where you hang out?
But actually, like, because Peter Pan is the epitome of childhood and youth, but he's got so many flaws.
Yeah.
And as we sort of like alluded to like many, many times, it's like, in some ways, he's just as bad as that curly-headed guy with a hook for a hand. You know, Captain Hook.
Definitely.
Oh, is that who you're talking about?
Yes, sorry.
Yeah, okay.
And
a
like
second,
also,
though.
if we're drawing comparisons, there were so many times when we were just having these crazy, I'm going to use the word again, phantasmagorical scenes in Alice in Wonderland, and it just didn't you didn't get the payoff in terms of like description or like the world wasn't created, and I couldn't really imagine it. There was actually some scenes I couldn't imagine.
Yeah.
Whereas Neverland, I could picture everything 100% of the time.
It's true. His descriptions were a lot better in this. Like, even just, some of them disgustingly so as well. The way it was like, you know, all his hair was like dripping like candle wax and stuff like that. Like, it's a very vivid picture that J.M. Barrie was painting compared to Lewis Carroll, who was like, a blue caterpillar was sitting on a toadstool. The Duchess was in a house.
Yeah, quite.
And then you don't find out until 5 chapters later that the Duchess is apparently really ugly. Didn't tell us that when she was introduced. Let's just tell you that after she's been in jail.
I was going to say, that's something that I really liked is the style of writing that Barry has. I much preferred to the Alice in Wonderland. Yeah, it was just I really loved the writing, the way it was written. There were sentences that I'm like, that's such a good sentence. Like, just encaptured everything.
I mean, fairy orgy.
Mostly that sentence.
Peak. Peak literature.
He arrived unmolested at the foot of the shaft. I mean, it's just best sentence ever.
Yeah, Peter Pan was definitely a much more coherent narrative in that it had a clear beginning, middle, and end. It had an arc that we were following, even though we sometimes spent too long on certain points, arguably, before we sort of moved on to the next bit of adventure. It was a clear, as they say, sort of equilibrium, and then an adventure, and then a new equilibrium at the end. In that they started somewhere, they went on an adventure, and then they came back home. Which there's a satisfaction to a narrative that kind of rounds itself off in that way, isn't there?
Definitely.
Also, brownie points for it not being a dream.
Yes.
Yeah.
There is that.
Yes, thank goodness for that, because as we discussed last time, it's like as soon as you make it a dream, all the drama goes out the window.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which makes it better, because then when the kids were in peril, they were actually in peril, rather than just waking up.
You don't undermine any stakes that way, do you?
No, exactly.
Though at the same time, it was quite clear in the book that the Neverland was a dream world, but it was that these characters were actually getting to experience it for real.
Yes, in like a physical way.
Yeah.
I think it meant it more like a dream world in the sense that like you have some control over your dreams. Like they were manipulating things. The reason why the inhabitants were the way they were was because they were able to manipulate them. Like Peter Pan being able to manipulate whether or not there's food or not, that kind of thing, where it's like that's only something that can happen in a dream or in a fantasy state of mind as opposed to real life.
Definitely. So has anyone got any lowlights, any parts of the book that you kind of wished were written slightly better or had spent more time on? Or
I wouldn't have minded. I don't know, you might disagree. It would have been nice to have a reflective chapter, like back in the real world, to understand, almost to gain a bit more sympathy for people like Mr. Darling.
Right, okay.
It came back to it at the end, and it would have been nice to sort of seen it in sort of comparison. I don't know. Maybe we just heard too much from it at the start.
Like a real-time kind of jumping between meanwhile.
Maybe just because I know that would be like modern novels always like flick between characters, even if it's just the lead involved. But
there are some novels of this period though that do the same thing. Like Dracula, for example, does that, where you have the narrative of four different sometimes characters going on all at once, because the whole story is told through letters and diary entries. So you do have this like chronological cataloguing of all these different people's experiences that all relate to the central character, which is Dracula. So that kind of narrative and that kind of storytelling does exist at this time. And J.M. Barrie, by all means, could have done something more like that, where he was jumping between locations more.
Certainly, I'd say that, and I've just remembered something even more. Tiger Lily. Maybe that's because Disney decided that it was a more important character. But that for me, if it was casting a West End show, it's one of the sort of supporting female leads.
Yeah,
it was barely like there were Lost Boys that were far bigger characters that you didn't even know about apart from the book.
That's what I was going to say was my sort of low light, is that we didn't get nearly enough of that faction of people. It's sort of it's painted right from the offset when they arrive at Neverland like there's this symbiosis between all of these factions, between the pirates and the Lost Boys and the wild beast, is it? And the Redskins.
No beasts.
And yet we don't get the Redskins. We get a little bit of them, and then they're all slaughtered, and we don't really get any wild beasts at all, apart from the crocodile, who actually doesn't seem to be part of any of those factions at all. And so for me, it would have been nice to have had a more of a glimpse into those other parts that sort of keep this ecosystem going, if you like. And just to have the experience of that very different culture that is that kind of Native American encampment that
it'd be interesting to find out how much about that culture J.M. Barrie actually knew, though, or if that's the reason why we don't spend much time with them, because apart from knowing words like squaw, maybe apart from those very surface level things, he didn't know enough to kind of go into depth. Maybe, I don't know.
No, true. But we also didn't get very much of Tiger Lily's rescue for my
No, she disappeared very quickly in Marooners Rock. She kind of slid into the lake and disappeared.
Yeah, there wasn't really made much of in terms of a huge story arc. And again, it was a lovely little subplot that could have kept us occupied
True.
And also it could have, fueled some more of our kind of, the pirates are evil and we need our lost boys to go and save the day kind of a thing. But it was quite glossed over, wasn't it?
I would have preferred as well if that story of Maruna's Rock was told as a present day narrative and was a story that fed from the kids arriving rather than being a flashback of the kids have been here for how many weeks now and this is one of the adventures I'm going to tell you about they had a few weeks ago. I feel like you would have kept a lot more of the tension if it had been a real-time adventure, not knowing then the outcome. Whereas we knew that the kids survived and we knew that Peter Pan survived because this was a flashback. So you kind of lost a lot of the drama there. And one of the other things that's kind of a little bit upsetting is that when he described Tiger Lily right at the start, she was made out to be this like warrior princess, like this badass who was like, ridiculous with a tomahawk and like could hold her own with the other warriors in the camp. And you just never saw any of that. So you kind of go, why have this prominent female, strong lead character and then just completely dismiss her and focus instead on Wendy, who's just made to be really wetter than she even is. Do you know what I mean? She's made to be even more submissive and housewifely than actually in terms of her spirit and her mental capacity. You'd expect her to be someone who's a lot stronger and a lot more forthcoming with her opinions.
Actually, on a similar vein, though, it's surprising how very little Tinkerbell is in the book.
Yes, it's
as
true.
Well, like in all film depictions, she's the reason why Hook finds the Lost Boys' hideout in the first place. Like, she becomes so heartbroken, so dejected that she goes and mopes, and Hook sees her and realizes she's someone that he can manipulate. Mm-hmm. Grabs her, goes like, "Oh, I wouldn't treat you that way," all of that kind of thing. And that's how she, like, and playing on the fact that she doesn't like Wendy, being all like, "Oh, if you tell me, I'll get rid of Wendy for you." And she's just very much like, "Oh yeah, let's get rid of Wendy." That she ends up selling out everyone. But I mean, Captain Hook found the Lost Boys hideout in like the second chapter.
Yeah.
Just because he happened upon it. Like,
because he sat on a hot toadstool.
Exactly.
Complete accident.
Like, there was no need for Tinkerbell either.
No. Apart from her saving Peter from the poison, that was almost like the only, and them needing her fairy dust to get there in the first place. Those are the only two things, deciding points in the plot where it's like you have to have Tinkerbell there.
It's bizarre to have a fairy, which for a lot of kids, any sort of like magical or legendary being would be exciting and an easy sort of way for the author to sort of drum up excitement and instant sort of gratification for the kids. It's so weird to have a flipping fairy and just be like, well, she did a bit.
Yeah.
Even more so given that this was originally a play.
Yes.
You would play that up because you have that visual to go along with it. If he didn't write it, and then you would think, oh, the movie adaptations added that because, a fairy, that's really fun visually. But it started off as a visual.
Yeah.
And she wasn't even a big part of it. It just doesn't really add up at all.
No, it's true. So you've got some facts for us.
I do.
Surrounding Jay and Barry. So do you want to give us a few?
Okay, I'm going to give you the first one, which when I came across, I was like, really? So I mentioned that it was a play, and Captain Hook was not in the original play.
Really?
Who was the villain then?
There wasn't one.
There was no villain.
Boring.
He felt that Peter was enough of a demon boy who could create his own havoc, that there was no reason for there to be a villain, per se.
Do you know what the plot of the play was then? Because obviously the whole thing focuses around Hook versus Pan. So what was it about?
It was just about literally about the boy who wouldn't grow up. So he lived with the Lost Boys, he met the Darling family, had a friend that was Tinkerbell, and it was meant to just be the fantastical land or like the snapshot of being whisked away to a fantasy world. And the reason why Hook became a thing is really boring. Like, the reason behind it is literally so it gave stagehands more time to switch scenery.
What? That's amazing.
Wow.
So he needed more time, so he needed one that could be performed on a stage, and he ended up writing a pirate ship, and that's how Captain Hook then
Amazing.
became a more prominent character. But originally,
Yeah, this is something with theatre you have to be able to consider, though, when you've got characters moving from one period of time to another. You know, does this person have enough time to change their costume? Do the stagehands have enough time to strike this scenery or set up the next scene or anything like that? So
Yeah.
it is hilarious. But yeah, I can completely see why they go, oh, we'll just stick a musical number in here and an ensemble tap number to give the leads more time to change.
Yeah.
And that's totally what happens. The next time you go to the theatre, listeners, see if you can work out the bits where the producer's just buying time.
But inventing it like this amazing character that's one of the most famous just because they wanted to do that is incredible.
Yeah.
But what a happy accident.
But yeah, when I read that, I was definitely like, oh, that explains why he was written the way he was, and why they didn't bother fleshing out the whole cake thing, because his scenes were only important when it came to like almost a transition.
But hilariously being the battle between him and Peter was the climax of the book.
Yeah.
That was the only thing that book was working towards.
It's like him as a character was fleshed out halfway through the book.
Yes.
Because he was a second thought. So he was like, let me just chuck him here and there to kind of like help with transitions. And then it was like, oh, actually, that's actually quite an interesting theory, or quite an interesting thing to go with. Let's add a bit more. But, I'm not going to change the first half of the book because can't be bothered with that. So
I found him infinitely more interesting than Peter.
Oh, yeah.
Just the fact that he's grown up and he's had a past life, like him having gone to Eton and him having been to... And it's like, well, how did you end up being the head captain pirate of a boat in an imaginary land? Like, how did that happen? I'd almost rather have an origin story of Captain Hook and him meeting Barbecue and him rising up the pirate ranks from this very well-to-do guy who, I don't know, maybe his family were going to force him into a marriage he didn't want to go and he ran away, or I don't know, like that would be infinitely, like, fan fiction story would be so much more interesting. I think we're onto something here. Just like they did Wicked, we should do this. We should do the villain story of Captain Hook.
Let's get that musical written.
Are pirates born wicked?
It turns out Hook's actually really nice and was just minding his own business, and this jerk demon child came along and cut his hand off.
It's like, stop being annoying. It's like,
Yeah,
on guard.
exactly.
I'm trying to sleep. On guard. Stop it.
What other facts have you got for us?
another fact, again, so same on the similar vein, fairy dust was added later for health and safety reasons.
Of course it was.
Pray do tell.
Oh my god.
Because of reports of children jumping off their beds and getting injured.
Because they thought, if I just think a happy thought.
Yeah, it was just they were just meant to fly unaided. He added the fairy dust so that children realised that they didn't have that key
They
ingredient
missed an
and would
ingredient.
stop jumping off,
No,
stop
That's
jumping off the beds.
brilliant.
that is actually brilliant.
That's a really good way of getting around it, though, because it's not like,
Yeah.
you know, I remember when I used to watch WWF where they'd always put the warning at the start, like, don't do this at home. So rather than just doing something really boring like that at the start of every Peter Pan performance, going, don't try and fly at home, adding something like that is such a more creative way of limiting people injuring
going around it,
themselves.
yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
I'm really impressed at how clever that is.
That's very good.
My favourite line, to die would be an awfully big adventure. I have always loved that line, but it was actually cut during the productions that were shown during the First World War. So they got rid of that line because they wanted people to fight for the war, but they didn't want them to like chase after death per se, to be like, it's an adventure. It was more of a of like, you're doing a good thing. We don't want you to die.
Yeah.
So, you know, try and come home, basically. That was a little bit more sobering, but for you.
No, it's fine. No, these are really good things to know. It's just kind of very intriguing.
And it is a beautiful line, though, isn't it?
And I guess because it's constantly like evolving and adapting, it is good to see. Similar to like the fairy dust thing, you know, oh, what's this problem? Let's adapt it. It was the same thing. Like,
Yeah. It shows a level of like social conscientiousness.
Yeah.
And what would be interesting is to find out whether the racism and the misogyny that is very present in the book is something that obviously nowadays in modern depictions of Peter Pan in the theatre would leave all of that stuff out. So it'd be interesting to see when that started happening, when the social consciousness went, actually, that's not okay. We shouldn't be portraying those people in that way, and finding out when that shift happened. Have you got any more facts for us?
yeah, I've got one more fact about Peter Pan as a production and play and book, which I thought was actually really, really heartwarming.
Okay.
So, Great Ormond Street receives all the royalties for Peter Pan.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So, he allocated the rights to Peter Pan to Great Ormond Street Hospital, and every time Peter Pan is, written or done as a movie or a musical or TV show, part of the royalties, the rights go to Great Ormond Street. And he asked for the amount raised that should never be revealed, and the hospital to this day has still held that. Now, I don't know what happens now that it's out of copyright, but that's, for the past however many years, 100 years or so.
I had heard of that, but I didn't realize it was like, every, all the rights and all the money generated sort of went towards it, because I watched somewhere along the line when we were recording this book, I watched the Disney film again because I hadn't seen it since I was little. And it says in the little overture at the beginning, proceeds go to Great Ormond Street, but I assumed it was just for that film. I didn't realize it was for, sort of everything, which is cool.
So since 1937.
Yeah. Wow.
So maybe it was, so if you feel like it as listeners, why don't you donate £5 to the Great Ormond Street Hospital right this moment?
Oh, that's a lovely little...
provide a link or something on the
Yeah,
Instagram.
we'll do that.
Oh, we will.
Oh, heartwarming.
Yeah. Is it quiz time?
Oh,
It can be quiz time. if
Quiz
you're ready for
time.
quiz
Shall I just
time.
mute my
Right.
microphone?
I'm going to assign buzzers. Josh,
Yes.
hook, doodle do.
I've got as hook. I've got to say doodle do.
So that's your buzzer.
Okay.
David,
Yeah.
Tinkerbell. Silly ass.
Silly ass.
Yeah, you can do your own scale. If you
Yeah.
can do a minor scale, just to rub it into Josh's wounds. That he
Silly
can-
ass. Silly ass. There you go.
And I hadn't quite decided on mine. I was thinking maybe one of the darling children doing
What about nibs, nibs, nibs?
nibs, nibs.
Nibs, nibs, nibs.
I complain of Matt.
Okay, I'll go. I complain.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
I like that. Because Nibs has always been your favourite.
He has. I feel a slight kind of soul connection
Yeah.
with Nib. Brilliant. So are you happy with those? You can tell who's doing what? Noah? Yeah? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Right. So we dive in.
Yes.
Just to warm up, we'll do some easy ones. So, question number 1. Who traps Peter Pan's shadow so that it gets stuck in the nursery?
Doodle do.
I think I heard Matt first. It was really hard, but I think I heard Matt first.
I believe it was the person who shut the window. Nana.
The correct answer is Nana.
Yeah.
Well done.
I was like, it's the person who shut the window. No, wait, Nana grabbed the shadow. That's 1-0, Josh, just so you know.
I thought that was a practice.
Hey, shut up.
Okay, so we've established Nana. So, what kind of dog was Nana?
Silly ass.
Doodle do.
We got Tinkerbell there first.
Is it St. Bernard?
No, she's not.
Doodle
Josh,
do.
Yep.
I actually don't know. Is she in Newfoundland?
Oh,
Yes,
no.
yes.
No, please get it wrong. Please get it wrong. Please get it wrong.
But you know what's funny is that J.M. Barrie himself had both a St. Bernard and a Newfoundland.
Oh,
Oh,
well, there you go.
What is Wendy's full name?
Doodle do.
Ah,
Yes, Captain Hook.
That is Wendy Moira Angela Darling.
Yes.
how did you know that?
I remembered that just because Angela. Remember, we were talking about how common that name
Yeah.
was.
Angie.
You know, it's just such a fancy name, and it was like Angela.
Angela.
we all know about Tinkerbell. How does she get her name?
Doodle doo.
I forgot what I was saying.
Yes, Captain Hook.
I've actually now forgotten. It's because she is a tinker. She mends things.
Yes.
Is that right?
She mends pots and kettles.
No, see, he only got half the answer there.
What? That was the answer.
You said mends things. It was very, very specific that she mended pots and
Do you
pans.
know what? I've had enough.
But
of
we're
you
going to give
already.
it to you anyway, because then I have
Thank
an
you.
excuse for why
Oh,
you beat
okay,
me.
fine. Do you know what? No. Do you know what?
So half answers from now
let's
on.
just-
Then from everyone.
Let's just let that point because I'm not gonna have you beat
I
me.
don't
That
want to taint your victory.
Oh dear. What was the name of the ship's cannon?
Doodle
Oh,
doo.
I can never remember what I meant to say.
I think
Captain Hook.
I think it's called Long John.
I can
So
play.
close,
I
but
can
not
play.
quite.
Oh no!
Yes.
Long Tom.
Yes,
Oh,
Long Tom.
it was Johnny Plank. That's why.
That's Johnny Blank. Or Long John Silver. I don't know
Yeah,
which
well,
one you get. I love that you got Moira, Angela, Darling, but
Darling.
couldn't remember Long Tom.
Yeah, all right.
When and why does Wendy plan to return to Neverland?
I complain. For the
Yes.
spring cleaning.
And how often?
Oh, she's meant to go back once a year, but Peter Pan never comes
yep.
because he loses track
Once
of time.
a year to do Peter's spring cleaning, which is such a sad thing
yes,
to
Very
do.
sad.
God.
But
And
very-
also a sad thing to look forward to doing as well.
oh, I know.
Come on, David, we need to get you some points.
Yeah, people are thinking like, oh, Dave's internet has gone.
All right, well, hopefully you'll get this one. As an expression of his guilt, how did Mr. Darling punish?
Doodle doo.
I think that might have been Tinkerbell.
Think about.
He slept, rested, and existed within the doghouse, doing everything in his life. He went to work, he came back, followed by a parade of people. He lived the essence of what it was to be someone in the doghouse.
Yeah, he moved into the dog
There you
kennel and
go.
just tried to become Nana.
I think 2 points for that incredibly. I explained that so well. I'd get two, even in an English exam, I'd get 2 points for then explaining more.
Because you
I
showed you're
think-
working.
Yeah.
I think don't push it, Dave, because
I think I got 1 in Alice in Wonderland, and that's fine. I just didn't want to like.
you're on the board now. It's fine.
Just didn't want nil point.
I don't want people to think I'm thick as mints because I'm not.
What did Peter use to remove Hook from the ship in the battle?
Doodle doo.
complain.
Yes, Captain Hook.
He wait.
What did he use to remove Hook from the ship?
He used his foot, like, because then Hook
Yes!
tripped over it. Is that is that the answer? Okay.
His
Yeah.
foot is the answer.
Okay.
I think it's meant to be a thing of like, someone might say sword or someone might say hand or... yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, it was to kick him.
Mm.
So he used his foot.
So a quick point check. I'm on 3.
3.
1.
Okay.
What does Peter Pan take from Mrs. Darling?
I complain.
Talk about actors being played by young girls.
The kiss
Yes.
from her lips.
he takes the kiss that's in the corner of her mouth.
Yes. No. Josh is looking very tense right now.
What's the score? What's the score?
4.
3.
1.
When asked for directions to Neverland, what does Peter say?
Doodle doo.
Yes. No.
I don't know if I'm doing this from the Disney. Second star to the right and straight until morning.
No.
Oh
No,
no!
I don't know then.
There was a QI one, and the bus is going, and I don't know.
It was very, very close.
I was going to say something similar.
Yeah,
to
that's
Josh.
all I know.
It was going to be something, like a straight on. I know it's straight on till morning is the end, isn't it?
It is definitely straight until
Yes.
morning because then
Yes,
we
it's
It's straight on
it's
till
the
morning.
first bit.
And then
Your
right at
first- your
Ipswich.
first turn's wrong.
And it is second.
Is it?
And it is
second right at
right.
Tesco, straight on till morning.
But not the small Tesco, the big Tesco.
Second on the right.
Ah.
You know what?
Yes.
I'd say give it to him.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah,
give it.
give
You
it
know
to
what? I will give it to you because
So close.
you did mention I wonder if it's the movie one. Because the mention of the star comes from the Disney movie.
Okay.
Yeah.
But in the play or in the book, Peter doesn't say that because Peter doesn't actually know how far
right.
or where Neverland is because he doesn't have the concept of direction.
Yes.
Interesting.
Cool.
So to him, it's just like, just like second on the right, just go
It's
straight
now
on.
so famous, obviously, because of the opening song. The second star to the right. Like that, or however it goes. I can't remember.
Exactly. And, you just recently watched the film again.
did,
So you're
yeah, I
probably
did.
like, yes, it's the star. So that was a tricky one, trick question
okay.
for you guys. What makes Wendy consider or want to take John and Michael home?
Silly ass.
Yes, Tinkerbell.
Is it to do with like Peter's story about going home and the window being shut, and then she was worried that might happen to them?
Yep, it's the reason why she wanted to go home suddenly was because Peter said that his mother didn't wait for him.
David just did a fun dance there,
Yeah.
listeners. You didn't see it.
Oh, missed it. I was
It was a David Brent dance.
Yeah.
It was a bit David Brenty.
Peter Pan creeps on board of the Jolly Roger. We know that. After killing Ed Tyne, Hook sends one of his crew members to receive something from the cabin.
I
That
complain.
he's in. I complain. I didn't finish my question, but I complain got there first. What was it that the crewman was sent to get?
Oh.
Oh. I thought it was who, was it? Oh, no.
No. So Hook sent a crewman to go in the
yes,
cabin
I
that
complain.
Pan was in. Yes,
The Cat of Nine Tails.
Yes.
Oh,
the Cat of
yeah.
Nine Tails.
Pinky.
That's a good
The
question.
Cat of Nine Tails, so. When it goes
Yes.
down, when it goes down. To the sun below. Oh. Oi, oi, oi.
Oh yeah.
That was okay.
It's what the second verse of the song was about, wasn't it?
I love
All
that we
about
know
Cat of
the
Nine
songs
Tails.
that we wrote, which could completely.
We only know it because of
Because of Bob Marley.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he's sent into the cabin to get the cat, and
Oh, yeah.
that was
Cat of Nine Tails.
So how many questions? Is it one left now?
Yeah, one left.
So it's 5, 4,
Two.
2. Okay, Josh, you got to get this to make it a tie break.
Oh no. Okay.
What saves Tinkerbell's life? Captain Hook.
It is all of the children saying that they believe in fairies.
No.
What? That is right.
The kids clapping.
Yes, Nibs. It's clapping.
No.
All of the children around the world clapping. Oh, you're so close.
They do say that. I'm sure they say that.
I believe
They say
that's a book quiz point to me.
Well done, Matt. Well done.
Livid.
Suck it, Josh.
You won the quiz on the podcast you edit and listen to like 50 times. There are some episodes I've not listened to back, just purely.
It's true. It's true. I am at an unfair advantage. I do have to listen to these a lot more than everybody else, but they are in the ether for you to listen to as many times as you want.
Oh, yeah,
So
but-
if you're not doing your revision, you have only yourself to blame.
Wow.
He's the true embodiment of the lazy book.
It's true.
The laziest of the laziest.
He is the lazy element.
Don't call me an element.
Well, thank you for that quiz, Noah. Always a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you.
Thank you. I love
We're clapping. All the fairies are living.
Yeah. And I suppose this is a really good time to announce our next book that we're going to be doing on the Lazy Book Club. Now, most people might listen to this and go, well, they're just doing all the Disney stuff. But we have actually had a few requests for this book.
And also, it's
And-
nice to do things in trilogies, I think.
It's true. It's very true. We will get on to more serious books later, but we're going to definitely stay with the Disney fairy tale theme with this one. And I can see, having read the first couple of chapters and had a little look, I can completely see why people have asked for this, because it is absolutely ridiculous.
Yes.
It's a lot of fun. It's going to be very weird. You're going to want to stick around for it. So the next book in the Lazy Book Club anthology is Pinocchio.
Woohoo!
I'm a real boy.
Now, I think Noah has. Noah, you've read this before, haven't you?
Yes, I've read this and I've seen quite a few adaptations. I guess similar to Peter Pan, that there are quite a few adaptations of it. I have seen a few adaptations
Yeah.
of Pinocchio, and I know. I mean, you just have to watch the Disney one. You know, it's got quite a dark undertone.
Yes.
So I know that the book is probably going to bring a lot more.
Yeah, I mean, if Disney can't even bring the fluff to it, then it must be pretty weird.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it is. And even the like origins of Pinocchio are actually completely different. When I was reading the first chapter, I was like, wait, what? Because the way that Disney do the whole thing of him becoming animated and him becoming, able to walk and talk on his own is completely different to how the book describes it happening. So it's a lot more fun in the book, if I'm honest. The way that it all comes about is a lot more fun.
Spoilers.
Yeah, I know. I'm just trying to build up as much tension as possible so people come back for the next book. It's going to be, I think, a really, really good series, as well as just the fact that everybody loves Josh's Italian accent. So having the whole thing set in Italy is going to be great fun.
Now, we're always looking for input from our lovely listeners, and what I thought would be a nice idea is for you guys to have some input into what Josh's accents are. Me and Matt are sometimes limited to what we're thinking about at that time, and maybe missing out on a whole wealth of challenges for our wonderful voice wordsmith to do. So even if it's like the world's smallest character, or like a character that comes in like later on or anything like that, just any suggestions would be brilliant, because we get to laugh at it.
Definitely. Even if you just haven't even got a character in mind and you've just thought of a good voice that might be good to throw at Josh, then definitely send it. Because there are times where Josh will go, I need a voice for this character. And me and David are just like, like so put on the spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and those are the moments when they come up with the most ridiculous things in the world, and I have to then try and do it.
It's true.
I have to say, like, for the most part, you do get pretty
Oh, definitely.
spot on.
Yeah, they have been pretty good.
The only
actually.
thing from Peter Pan, I was just like, Smee's Irish.
Oh,
I know.
Yeah, no, we did know that, but we decided to go against
Just
that.
like-
It even says in the book, but by that point they'd already told me. And I was
Well,
like,
and also Peter Pan was Irish, and we were like, we don't want two Irish characters.
That's fair. But yeah, that was the one bit I was like, ooh.
Yeah, we'd made Peter Pan way before Smee even came into it, so we didn't even know that Smee was Irish until he came in 5 chapters later.
it's me's Irish heritage. He's just not Irish. You know?
Oh, he's one of those Americans that just says,
Yes.
oh, I'm a quarter Irish.
I'm Irish. My grandmother, but I'm still Irish. You know?
Yeah, he's like Peter Griffin Irish.
Yeah.
He gets really dressed up for St. Patrick's Day, even though
Yeah.
he's got
Well, thank you so much, Noah, for coming in.
Oh, thanks for
and
having
helping
me.
us
Next
out.
time I'm on, if I'm on again, Josh, I'm rooting for you. You need to earn a crown for these quizzes. No, Josh,
I could do with the
you
second point.
need to do that.
David
And
just wants to get a point on the board.
Yeah.
I mean, you know.
Yeah.
David, do your homework. I can't help you.
Well, listen, I doubled my score. So if we're going to go on
You did.
exponential
Okay,
growth.
so next time we're aiming
So
for
by book
4,
5, I'm
yeah?
going to have
4 points.
32 points.
Which, seeing as there's never that many questions, is going to be an amazing feat. Well, thank you so much for joining us for our epilogue episode. If you have any comments or thoughts on any of the themes or any of the facts that we were talking about today, then you can message us on thelazybookclub@gmail.com.
Or drop us a little line on Twitter. Our handle is @LazyBookClubPod.
And we're exactly the same on Instagram @LazyBookClubPod.
As I've said for the last few weeks, we're now on Anchor, and so you can send us voice messages in as well, which I can actually copy over and insert into the audio of the podcast. So if you would like to appear on the podcast, particularly after this one, the epilogue, if you'd like to add your own little take or your own little opinion, then I can definitely insert that in. Otherwise, we will see you next week for the first and probably second chapter of Pinocchio, as the chapters are quite short, so we might have to do the two together. And we will see you there. Goodbye.
Bye.